kid from the bush who grew into a legend in his own lunchtime, former SAS soldier Michael J. Malone has seen it all. This is Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, hosted by the man himself, Mick Malone, along with Toby Malone, as they examine this long, storied career in the Australian Special Forces. Join us each week for behind-the-scenes insight, exclusive readings, and brutally honest truths from a true original. Welcome to Never Die Wondering. Welcome to episode 33 of Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words, a podcast that explores the life and legend of Michael John Malone, OAM. My name is Toby Malone, Mick's son and co-host of this podcast series, joined by the man whose name is in the title, Mick Malone. Hi, Dad.
There you go, mate. All right.
Yeah, good. Enjoying the process. It's getting colder here where I am. I'm sitting here in a jumper. It's getting warmer where you are, which is, I guess,
Cool.
the way it works at the both sides of the world. But
Mm.
yeah. It's nice to be able to connect on the podcast and be able to talk
Yeah,
through
yeah.
these different kinds of things. And I'm trying to learn a new thing or two every now and then. So as we go, because I feel like I maybe know it all, but every now and then I learn something new. So that's good. The idea would be that this podcast acts as a supplement or a companion to the book. So if someone's reading the book, they can read this, and then this is like getting a DVD commentary to the book itself. So hopefully people are enjoying that aspect to it, and this will outlive us all. So it's good to have.
Mm.
So in the last episode, we were talking about what you were doing around the barracks. You were back from the war. You were getting some promotions. You were getting ready for you were in New Guinea, getting ready to go back up to Vietnam. And as we'll discover in this next chapter, all of that was scuppered by the fact that the Australians pulled out of the war. Gough Whitlam pulled the pin. Did you ever see it coming?
Not really. We were pretty thankful it happened
Yeah.
uh, because it had been going on too long. But I wanted to go as a patrol commander,
Hmm.
and looked like I was never going to get a chance then.
There wasn't ever sort of rumors around that the war was on its last legs.
We kept away from all the Bolshevik, bloody socialist rubbish the newspapers are going with,
Hmm.
all Viet Cong and all that sort of stuff. We kept away from all that. We had our own little cabal of thought processes,
Hmm.
and most of it was Bob Menzies type stuff.
Right. But
And we weren't concerned. We just played the game as it came.
right. But as we'll find out in this chapter, when you get told that the plans that you have are off because the commitment has been called off, that's got to be pretty shocking.
Yeah, yeah. It was quite a relief, actually.
Yeah.
Everybody was relieved.
Hmm.
God,
Right.
at the end of the day, we were going to stay home with our families, and that was it.
Yeah. Was there anyone who was really upset about it, or were most people pretty
Nah,
relieved?
all the
No.
Nashos pulled the pin
Yeah.
and got out fairly immediately as soon as Gough Whitlam announced that. We came home from New Guinea and proceeded to drink the place dry.
Well, let's read a little bit about that. We're going to go into this next chapter to hear a little bit about the aftermath of all of that and everything we just talked about. The calling off all happens in the first paragraph of this chapter, so there's no real spoilers. But we'll find out what happens to a group of fighting men when you take away their war.
Yeah.
And like you've said, a lot of it is found at the bottom of a bottle of beer. But let's have a read of chapter 30. So we'll be reading chapter 30 of Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, OAM, published in 2024 by Imprimatur Books, Perth. The chapter, entitled Plans Change, covers pages 209 to 214 in the print edition. The ebook may have slightly different numbering, so follow from the beginning of the chapter. As we read, the body of the text will be read by author Mick Malone. Whenever we come across a footnote, we'll pause in the least disruptive way possible and I will read the footnotes. And now, without further ado, Two Ranks on the Road.
Chapter 30, Plans Change, 1971 to 73. Called off. In late July 1971, I was attending another briefing with the whole squadron in attendance. The OC said, "Men, I have something to tell you. Two squadrons coming home. The PM has called off our commitment." He could have knocked us all over with a feather. There were some very relieved faces in the room, though many disguised their relief with smiles. I must admit I was relieved, and I knew my mother would be beside herself with joy that her son would not be going once more into the tiger's mouth. All the Nashos, to a man, said they would pull the pin, even though the withdrawal was the decision of the Liberal Party. Liberal PM William McMahon. By the time most of the troops were home, all the credit was claimed by Labor's anti-war Gough Whitlam, who won the election and became the hero of the Nashos and my father. Whitlam had a few commos on his front bench who would have had his ear, and back to those days, ASIO had their time cut out tracking various Russian spies as they had little time to keep an eye on our own scoundrels. When two squadron arrived home, it was the first time all three Sabre squadrons had been in the barracks at the same time since the regiment was formed, and 1 and 2 Squadron in 1964. 3 Squadron was the last to be raised in 1965-66, purely for the Vietnam stoush. All of 3 Squadron's senior NCOs were from 1 and 2 Squadrons when 3 Squadron deployed to Vietnam in 66. 2 Squadron was still deployed to Borneo, which was the first time we had 2 squadrons deployed at the same time in 2 separate theatres. It was a joyous reunion, and a lot of the old and bold and the messes were heaving. Meeting the 2 Squadron blokes at the Grapney Club was also an occasion to be relished. Before long, most of the Nashos had left to go back to their civvy lives, leaving the diehards to carry on. In early 72, I was promoted to Corporal 2 Stripes and sent on an airport ability team leaders course, APTL course in RAF-based Richmond, New South Wales, which was very low. This was a very low priority course in this scheme of things. And we learned how to load stores, vehicles, artillery pieces, and anything else into a C-130, using the balance points of the aircraft to fit everything in. It was a bit of fun, and I met some likely lads on the course and among the staff. Best thing about it was being able to get back to Mum and Dad. Mum had loaned me her car, a Charger, for the duration, and my sister Helen's family were at Penrith, close to Richmond. All in all, it was a relaxing couple of weeks, and I couldn't wait to get home. Around this time, I thought I'd try my hand at water operations. The great Jimmy Stewart was running the shallow water divers course off the WA coast, but it didn't take me long to realise that the environment wasn't for me. I was buddied up with Jim Phillips, who was a natural underwater operator. One day after a buddied up swim, I hauled myself into the Zodiac where Jim Stewart took one look at me and said, "I don't think this is for you, young fella." I was very much relieved and left the course that day. There were no recriminations because not every member of SAS is able to do everything. Vehicle mounter was my calling. I also successfully completed a small craft handlers course, usually in the 2-man canoe, the Klepper Aries, which was great fun. Perth Legacy.
Footnote: Legacy was established in 1923 to support the families of servicemen affected by war, and the Legacy camp served the children of those families. The camp occupies a great site on Caves Road fronting onto Geograph Bay.
Perth Legacy called around this time, and a few of us volunteered to assist on their annual camp in Busselton. Wolf and Neil, Freddie Roberts, a few others, and I took a truckload of stores down there, accompanied by three Land Rovers and a Land Rover ambulance. We were loaded down with Q store supplies, including stretchers, blankets, pillows, and sporting equipment. It was great to go somewhere at least without weapons. We also took a cook and rations for the kitchen. SASR fully support a legacy on this camp and would do so for many years to this day. At the camp, we got into the habit of asking the 8 and 10-year-old if they had older sisters. I came up trumps in this aspect and followed it up when I got back to Perth. This is how I met the lovely Carol Date, a nursing sister at Fremantle Hospital. We knocked around for a while before she showed me the door. It was what it was, and I was better off out of it. I remained in 3 Squadron with my few remaining mates, and we established a vehicle-mounted VM troop in 3 Squadron, led by Johnny Jewell. 2 tours of Vietnam with 3 Squadron, although we hardly went out the gate for the 3 years that Whitlam was PM. 1 Squadron also had a VM troop, C troop, under George Garvin, 1 Squadron Borneo and 1 Squadron Vietnam. And Don Jensen, 2 tours to Vietnam with 1 Squadron. All 3 squadrons had a similar makeup, Water Ops, Freefall and VM, and 3 Squadron had K Troop again as a climbing troop. The leadership of both Sabre squadrons was very experienced in jungle warfare and would soon face up to the quantum leap to Australian desert conditions, which was vastly different kettle of fish. I Troop had some good operators in the ranks, such as Johnny Matten, who was just RTU'd from 1st Recruit Training Battalion, 1 RTB Kapuka. Gordon Tiddums, our only Indigenous member, Alan Ingram, Ian Rasmussen, Andy Cochran, Pip Eloy, Kev Otway, John Starry and Neil Spackman, Ron Howell and Bobby Sindel. Neil had been in the unit but ran afoul of an officer on a survival course and was shown the door. After his time in the naughty chair, he came back. Someone mentioned they'd seen him down at the RAP, so I ran down there to ensure he would come to L Troop. He agreed on the proviso, the CO agreed. So it came to pass. Spacky joined us and injected his humour and bushman skills sense into a jolly group. He was one of the best, great soldier, could fix anything, and had a robust sense of humour. He would have done with 10 more like him. Speaking of Gordon Tiddums, there was one occasion where he never turned up for work. I ran his married quarter and he told me he couldn't come in just yet, as 20 members of his family had descended from the Kimberley and they were all staying in his house. After 3 days, he came to work with a very sheepish look on his face. All good, lovely bloke, Gordon. Another time we were in the Kimberley, parked in a dry creek bed under a shade of willows. We were being non-tack on our way to an exercise AO, having lunch and a brew, when a truck turned up carrying a front-end loader. He then proceeded to fill the truck with river gravel. When he'd finished, he came over to have a yarn. Once he realised we were SAS, he said, "Do you blokes know Gordon Tiddums? He's a general in the army. I'm his Uncle Bill." We kept our mirth to a dull roar, had a brew with Bill, filled him in on what Gordon had been up to, and away he went with his load of gravel. Before we pulled out, we witnessed about 100 wild donkeys coming tearing down the creek, probably looking for water. We all got into our vehicles and watched them run past. What an experience. On another exercise in the northwest, one of the RAF Huey choppers crash landed. Mick Flight, 152 signals, and I were detailed to picket the choppers till the recovery team could get up there. We had rations and water for 7 days and we lived quite rough. Mick and I shared a lot of stories and jokes which kept us sane. After 5 days, the recovery team arrived and took over the wreck. We made ourselves scarce and got onto the road back to Perth. We never found out what the result of the investigation produced. In the meantime, the regiment was to soldier on, albeit with depleted numbers, and conducted back-to-back selection courses right through this period. The three Sabre Squadron concept continued to be an ideal way of making sure you had enough combat-ready soldiers for whatever the government of the day decided was needed. The system was one squadron deployed, one squadron getting ready to deploy, and the third squadron for the reception of new troops, training courses, leave, and all the rest. The system worked quite well for Vietnam and would work well for the future, or so we thought. Most training in this period was generally conducted in the close training area, the CTA, and only as far afield um, as Bindoon and Collie. We never left the state, and certainly the overseas trips. Certainly no overseas trips. So we spent a lot of time at the OBH, Swanee, and Highway pubs. We played a lot of rugby in the local Cottesloe Rugby League club, the Tigers, and the Cottesloe Rugby Union, the Seagulls or Blues.
Footnote: a few years later, the Tigers moved to Mosman Park, becoming Mosman Cottesloe Rugby League. Sadly, the club no longer exists.
I was playing in the lower grades for both clubs and for the Army of a Wednesday. Luckily, I was still young and fit, but I wasn't long though before I was starting to feel the effects of the constant batterings. So I gave it away. I stayed on at Mozzie Cott as a Zambuck, uh, looking after minor injuries, and gave this away after one season. Around this time, I traded in my panel van for a twin-cam Ford Escort. This was a veritable rocket ship, and being a brainless young lair, I soon crashed it, but not before Billy Campbell and I did the long drive across the Nullarbor on ARL. His folks lived in Newcastle, so after dropping in at home to kiss Mum, we headed north. Bill's family was very nice, and I agreed I could camp there for a day or so. Bill showed me around Newcastle, which in those days was a big working town with a huge coal shipping terminal and a steel smelter, in fact. In fact, I couldn't wait to get home. Said my goodbyes and headed out while Bill stayed with his family for the duration. When I pulled into home in St Mary's, the car was just about shot. As it was still under warranty, I took it down to a licensed Ford dealer in Penrith. They pulled the engine out and determined I'd bent a couple of push rods and various other things. They said it would take a week or so go ahead, I said, a bit of a bummer, a week without a car, since I wasn't sure Dad would lend me his. When the repairs were done, I got dropped down there by somebody and met the boss of the dealership in his office. He sat there and just shook his head. You must have really been really flogging it to do such damage. I did admit we gave it heaps out in the vast expanse of the Nullarbor, and given it was a new car and I had run in very conscientiously, I assumed it could handle long periods at high speed. I signed the release paper and went back and picked the car up. Needless to say, I took it easy on the way back to the west. I imagined my mother saying, "Stupid boy." Unbelievably, I was very pleased to arrive back at the barracks. I didn't have the escort very long because I nearly rode it off when some idiot came through a stop sign in Subiaco and T-boned me. Once repaired, they asked what colour I wanted it painted. Its original colour was candy apple red, but I leafed through a colour swatch and chose plum dinger purple for some unknown reason. My little car was never to be the same, though, so I traded in on a Holden HG Ute, which was a great car. It appeared Billy Campbell was a jinx omen for me. He was with me when the red rocket ship blew up on the trip to Sydney, and he was with me when, quite stupidly, I crossed the yellow line on Zavita Street, close to the barracks entrance, and hit a car coming the other way. Luckily, these were the days before breath tests because we were coming home from a pretty big session at the Highway Hotel. The cops booked me. I paid a fairly substantial fine, and I was without a car for a time, which served me right. So we settled into a post-war life and disappeared behind the gates of Campbell Barracks to wait out our next call. We got on the drink and generally caused good-natured mayhem around the place. After a couple of years of this, things were starting to look a bit ragged. Happily, the next big change was right around the corner. End.
And that was chapter 30 from Two Ranks on the Road, 35 Years of Australian Special Forces Service by Michael J. Malone, as read by the author. Okay, so you certainly filled your time pretty well after the commitment was called off. Lots of
Just a
different
bit.
stories, lots of different, and I like that you're trying your hand at different things in that chapter.
Yeah. Well, I was still only 22 years old.
No, 1971, you were 24.
Yeah, I was going to say that next.
71 to 73, you were 24 to 26. So, which is interesting because you mentioned that you've mentioned a couple times that that you guys were doing all this training, and so you were fit enough to be able to handle the 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 grog. But after you do it for a couple of years, your body doesn't
Yeah.
bounce back in the same way it used to.
No, no, certainly didn't.
Did it
But
change? Did it change the training at all when you didn't have a war to go to?
it did. We didn't do much training, actually. We did none of the old two ranks on the road
You weren't
stuff anymore.
no more marching around the parade ground.
Oh, a bit of that crept in. Um, the CO, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Jeffrey, who went on to be Governor of WA, he loved a parade. He loved to see the boys marching around the program in their nicely starched outfits, and we hated all that stuff, of course.
Right.
We wanted to do park helicopters on the playground, uh, give the parades, all the parades the punt. And Anzac Day was going to be our only parade. That's all we wanted. But it wasn't to be. He liked to line everyone up and inspect them. And oh my God, even selection courses in those days to get their berets, there had to be a regimental parade where the selection course blokes would be standing in the front and the CO would come along and put a beret on their head and salute onto the next one. We're all in the ranks with our rifles and oh
That's,
God.
I mean, that's that kind of ceremony is pretty. I mean, compared to what you did to get your beret, which was
Oh
wander down to the Q store and
yeah,
just they threw one at you.
yeah. No, it became
Yeah,
very pommy the way they did it.
right.
But we quite enjoyed it. We got the old ironing skills out again.
Yeah, and then you keep him busy with things like I mean, get doing different kinds of training, but also you trying your hand at water operations, which wasn't your bag.
What's it done? Bloody, I couldn't believe it. I hated every moment of it underwater.
Why? What was it about it?
Don't know, I just felt claustrophobic, and every time I saw a baler shell or something, I'd panic and think it was a great white shark. And you buddied up. You were tied to each other on a line
What
around
kinds
your
of
wrist.
what kinds of work were you doing underwater? Was it
Just navigational stuff, you know. You had a board with a compass on, and you swam on a compass leg, and that was it. I never got that far into the training before they
right?
showed me the board. The boys were learning how to swim onto ships and lay limpet mines, and
Did you did you pass on your experience at water operations when you met your future brother-in-law, who was who ended up being who was a naval commander?
No, we had a few conversations about the water, but it wasn't something I really wanted to engage him on.
You didn't want to sort of say, well, you think you're a hot stuff.
I had other things I was better at.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, yeah, and we'll meet him in future chapters, Ross Blue, who um who distinguished himself in Vietnam after you were there. But so yeah, so what had you done in the water when you came up and he said this isn't for you? How had he noted? Was it your demeanor when you came out or your ability
Well,
to complete the
thing called
task?
suck blowing. Suck blowing.
Right,
You empty your tank very quickly.
right.
So when I got into the boat, I was breathing like an old man, and spat the mouthpiece out, and that was it. Laid back in the boat, heading towards unconsciousness. And he said, "Mate, this is not your game."
Well, I guess there's only one way to find that out, right? I mean, it's like you discovered that you took to parachuting pretty well, but how would you know it until you tried?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Well, it was SAS after all. You had to try everything. You,
yeah.
you got involved in all sorts of things.
Well, and then you really found your calling when you set up the vehicle mounted troop, and so that's in this chapter as well, talking about that. And I
Yeah,
was in Perth in April for Anzac Day, and we went by the historical collection there at Campbell Barracks. If anyone's ever been into Campbell Barracks, is able to visit the historical collection. It's a beautiful collection of vehicles and aircraft and things like that, and the historical through the years. And so you were able to point and you say that's the one, maybe not the physical one, but you were able to say I was there when we started with that one, and then you're able to point to the modifications and
yeah, yeah. No, it's a fabulous collection. They've actually got a Black Hawk in there now.
yeah.
Um, an old Huey that we used in Vietnam.
So in
Um,
terms of the vehicle mounted though, you where did the inspiration come from? Because you were saying the Poms had a version.
well, the British SAS in World War II, under Sterling, uh, wreaked havoc against the German airfields in North Africa using American jeeps.
Hmm.
Uh, Three-man crews, two machine guns, and just drove down the airstrip shooting all these planes up. Sterling is credited with destroying more aircraft on the ground than the RAF did in the air.
Hmm.
It's quite amazing. And it was always as part of the SAS ethos. So it was only natural that we would get back to some sort of semblance of vehicle mounted ops. And we chose the Series 2A, which was the old Land Rover we had at the time. Um, the very first vehicle I had in the regiment in '57, when it was a company, was the Willys Jeep that the Americans used,
Hmm.
that the British SAS used in North Africa. They've got one of those in the collection too.
Right.
But you know, hopefully evolution is a thing that you see in things like that. You evolve into a better piece of kit.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then reacting to the terrain and the needs of the Australian desert is very different to.
oh, mate, it's just unbelievable. None of us, not many of us anyway, had ever been out that far, out on the edge of the Gibson, Gun Barrel Highway. Um, because I don't know whether you realise, but there are sand dunes that go east-west across the middle of the country,
Hmm.
and each dune is about 100 feet high.
Right.
And getting up them in a vehicle is just bloody near impossible.
Mm.
So the Gun Barrel Highway goes up there, and we just travel up there, and we had a lot of old BSA motorbikes, which were useless, absolutely bloody useless. And our trucks, we continually got bogged, and we were always pulling each other out with winches, and oh my God.
Mm.
So we had to evolve in a better situation. The Americans developed their Humvee and all that sort of stuff. We never went down that track, of course. We'd rather stick with the Pommy stuff and the German Unimogs, which was a great truck, Mercedes-Benz. But I loved those days, and the blokes were just tremendous. They were just fantastic. All fun and joy, no dramas, no. The Shyakin was always fun. It was never no punch-ups, none of that stuff.
Well, and lots of personalities. You talk about Gordon Tiddums in this chapter.
Oh, Cudge. He's a cousin of mine. He's a lovely bloke.
Yeah.
He's still around. I tried to contact him recently, and he never rang me back.
Right. I love that story about my cousin's my nephew's a general in the army.
General in the army. Oh, Gordon.
That's great. Yeah. And then other stories, like the crash site of the Huey. There's a picture of it in the book. I'm just going to hold it up there. It's on page 213. You can see there the Huey crash site that you went to stand picket on.
Yeah.
And so how did that come down? Was it just would looks
I
like
don't
it's
know.
in look it
Never
looks like
found out.
it's intact, so it can't have come down
Yeah.
very hard.
Oh, he crash landed.
Yeah.
Crash landed smack in the middle of the bush.
Hmm.
So I think he must have found a space that wasn't too big. The trees were very short, and that was that.
Right.
Another chopper came in and pulled out the crew, and we were in the vicinity, so we had to picket it.
What were you guarding against?
Oh, I just wanted to make sure the civvies never ran off with all the kit.
Was it
Everything.
close to civilization? It was in Shark Bay, so was there
No,
many
not
people
really.
around?
Not really. The local tribes were still around the place.
Right.
Um, so we just had to make sure that it wasn't. We were armed. We had a rifle,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a pretty boring time. 5 days sitting there on our stretchers,
Yeah.
walking around the camp, circumnavigating the place.
Yeah. So plenty of things to do while you're now that the commitment's called off, but then at the same time feeling a little bit of that restlessness about trying to figure out, well, what's next. Did you ever think of pulling the pin?
No, I sort of other blokes did, and I thought, no, I can't do that. No one's going to employ me.
Even after a couple of years of all that, you didn't think, oh,
Yeah, I didn't feel like going back to my old jobs, which were dreadful jobs.
hmm. So what?
Um,
So I mean, there's not really a spoiler in the next chapter that the reason things change is because you met my mother.
yeah, yeah.
What would have happened if you hadn't have met her?
Oh, I would have run off with some other floozy. I didn't
Fair
mean
enough.
that. It's just the way it turned out, mate. It was always perfect. A perfect arrangement. We've had a very, very happy 50 years. We've
Hmm.
never once had a blue over anything.
It's good. Yeah, and we'll find out more about that in the next episode, which we'll look forward to. But that is all the time we have this week for Never Die Wondering. So join us next week for the next installment in our exploration of Mick Malone's career. So we get to the 31st chapter of the book itself, titled Quantum Shift. And if you've been listening to what we've just been saying, you might have a sense of what that quantum shift is based around. If you have a copy of Two Ranks, please read along with us. I've been Toby Malone, and thank you to Mick Malone for logistically joining me on this journey. This has been Never Die Wondering, Mick Malone in his own words. For links to purchase your own copies of Mick's books, visit the show notes or mickmalone.com.au. This podcast is produced by Toby Malone, Joe Malone, and Mick Malone, and engineered by Toby Malone. Theme music is The Happy Wanderer, the official SAS march, as reimagined by Cormac Malone and Meg Logue Malone. Yes, this is a family affair. This is a GM production in association with Imprimatur Books.